welcome once again to the Brown Bag. We're going to drop the lunch because we're finding more and more that the lunch portion of the Brown Bag lunch lecture is not only a bit of a mouthful, but also lunch is normally not what people come for, it's the lecture itself. So we're just going to go ahead and take Dr. Fobb's suggestion and just call it the Brown Bag Lecture Series here at Talladega College, and welcome once again. I see some new faces and some old faces. I love seeing our regulars, but I love seeing new folks too. For those of you who don't know who I am Mr. Perry Trice. I'm the director of the William R. Harvey Museum of Art, as well as the Special Collections Librarian and Archivist for the Sacred Library here at Talladega College. Thank you to, as always, to my great volunteers, Dr. Fobbs and Ms. Warwick, and to everybody else that helped put this together today. I know that there are going to be some more students that are going to be joining us, but as I have been told several times today, when I asked students, are you going to come to the lecture today? You told me it was at 5. I said the lecture was at 3, and I said there's a reception at 5, so they're going to get here when they get here too, but I'm glad you're here. So a couple of housekeeping items that I want to do some log carrying for. So we're going to be having in addition to this exhibition that we're going to be having here in our museum, we're also going to be having a solo exhibition. The School of the Fine Arts and Humanities, or Humanities and Fine Arts, is going to be having The Places We Go is a exhibition by our own sculpture instructor, Ross Jr. Awasu, help me out with Awasu. Thank you, sir. Professor Owusu is going to be having a show of his sculpture. Is going to be being shown in the Good Now Art Gallery. If you're not familiar with the Good Now Art Gallery, it is our art gallery on the opposite end of campus. That is our fine arts building, and there is another art gallery. We have 2 art galleries on this campus, and you can go and see Professor Owusu's sculpture at that show as well. And then also, I got another flyer for our sister museum. The Comer Art Museum is going to be having a Black Art Extravaganza, and that's going to be happening in November. They are now accepting accepting submissions for painting, sculpture, ceramics, and etc. So if you have any of those items in your collection and you would like to share it with the world, please reach out to Director Elena Craddock. She's in the back there. You can reach out to her directly, or you can reach out to the Comer Museum about submitting your art. So let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? So we have set a mission forth that we want to begin bringing more and greater artists to the Harvey Museum of Art. For the longest time, we've had a permanent exhibition with the Amistad murals, but it's to the point now where when I'm reaching out to people and I say, are you going to come to the museum? They say, well, I've seen the murals. Oh, okay, you've seen the murals, but there's always something new that you have to come to the museum and see. And so we got that kicked off with our Bacon exhibition that we had last year, and then we had our Wild Alabama exhibition earlier this year, and now we're really kicking into high gear. This is the first international artist that we're going to be showing here at the Harvey Museum of Art. I'm very proud to have reached out to and had him accept our invitation to Richard Dial, Alabama's own Bessemer's hometown boy, Richard Dial. I'm gonna tell a quick story about how this all culminated. So I was looking specifically for Alabama artists that could come and show in the museum, and I start looking to see who's alive, basically. And all of a sudden I come across Richard Dial, and I thought, Richard Dial? Surely he is too famous at this point. There are some people that have already entered into the art canon that you think, that person's not accessible, but you know what, it's always worth a phone call. And I called, and I was able to get Richard's son, Brandon, and I said, gosh, he had shows everywhere. Has he ever considered, showing anywhere locally? I haven't, seen anything. And he was so humble about it. He goes, it's not that he hasn't, it's just that, you just have to call, and people just don't think that you can call because, he's entered the art canon now and he's, super famous, and people just don't think you can just pick up the phone. And I have learned through working with Richard that it's really something when people get a little bit of fame and that kind of gets to their head and they kind of become, you know, a little untouchable, or they kind of become the celebrity that they always wanted to be. And I find working with Richard to be so incredibly refreshing. I have never met anybody that is so down to earth. I don't know if I could borrow money from the man, but he wouldn't say no right away. I mean, it's incredible how humble he can be, and how approachable he can be, and how much of really a joy he has been to work with. So we decided that it might be best for us today if we just kind of did a panel, so we could have a conversation about your work. And so at this time, I'm going to invite our guest of honor, Richard Dial, to come up and join me for a conversation about his work.
All right, man, appreciate it.
You got it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I got a place for you right here, and we can continue our conversation. So, I wanted to start with, this is pretty close to where it started right here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this picture? That's on you. Go ahead.
Okay. I guess the first thing I want to address there is that is me, you know, but that was about 30 years ago. So, you know, I just been, you know, I kind of worked along sometimes side my dad and did these things on the side. And it all kind of started, you know, from I tell people this and they have a hard time believing, but in the backyard in a chicken coop, you know. And, you know, over the years, it progressed a little bit, and then, you know, things started to take off a little bit. And I think my dad was just way ahead of me, you know. So I had started a company in the backyard where we sold patio furniture. I think probably from Virginia to Arkansas, from Miami to Kentucky. And we would load, you know, 18-wheelers up off the front porch and have to tote it all, and tote all the steel back to the back. And I don't know have I ever told this one before, but it was an elderly guy. And he went and bought him a welding machine, welding hood, and he was gonna compete with us. And he'd come and sit down and watch what we was doing. He'd go back and make a part, and he'd come back. And he'd tell us, you know, what he was doing. And me and my brother said, if that's gonna be our competition, man, we just let him have it come. But we had to pull all that, unload trailer trucks and drag all the furniture to the backyard of the chicken coop and cut it off. So he was probably at least 60 at that time. And well, if he won't compete, let him go ahead. But all of it really started in the backyard, you know, in a chicken coop. And here we are.
That's amazing. So I don't know how many folks in the room know that it started with the manufacture of patio furniture, and you know, a lot of folks have that chicken coop or that garage that it started with. A lot of artists, you know, had a day job and then had an art career on the side of it. But you really, you had a mentor. So I don't, for those that are less familiar. So you can go ahead and tell them who this man is right here that's sitting on some of your work right here.
Oh yeah, that's my dad. I mean, greatest man ever been born, you know, in my opinion, you know. So I guess coming up, you know, we just kind of stuck to him. Well, we didn't have a choice, you know, because he had chores that, I mean, we farmed, we raised pigs, we raised cows, and anything else we could raise, you know, to survive. We also, he worked at Pullman Standard, and most of us worked at Pullman Standard, and the plant closed down. So that's when the hustle got on, because the whole Bessemer area things just went blank. He couldn't buy a job. And that's when he started doing a lot of work on the side, and you know, that's where the business started. And I just wished I were with my art where he's at today. So this is the when I said the man is humble. This is
the humbleness on display. So Richard is leaving out that his father is the artist Thornton Dial. So if those of you that have seen his father's work in galleries, you come by it honestly. The artwork and the work ethic that goes into it. But I don't think I realized that your dad was working at Pullman Industries as well. So he was also an artist that gave up his day job as well too. But he specifically was working in painting, and whereas you were working more specifically in sculpture, right?
Definitely, and after high school, I got into metalwork and as a machinist, because at that time, it was like a creative skill, you kind of work with steel and make different parts for people. And I guess that's I know for a fact that's what gave me the ability to work with steel. And I say all the time, it's just a little bit harder than working on paper, so. But I enjoy it. I've been doing it my whole life, and I love it. I just love working with steel, and to be able to create pieces that I do. I just create them from my heart, and I try to put everything I can, everything in me in that particular piece. So and so far, it's been joyful experience.
So your dad's work was primarily painting, but his painting is so dynamic. It's got such a three-dimensional sculptural element to it. Do you think there was a back and forth where you all almost having a conversation with your art between the two of you? Because I know you were, obviously you're working separately, but you're looking at each other's art. Do you think that you were sort of feeding off of each other and maybe even competing a little bit when you had each other's artwork in the studio?
Not really, I think the skills that he had, I grew up with. A lot of people don't know it, but before he got into the artwork, he just had to create out of something. It don't make any difference whether it's a beer can or whatever. He just picked things up and he just tried to develop something out of it. And I grew up in that around him, so I watched him, develop. Just work in general, because at that time he didn't have a market for anything. He just loved doing things and being creative, and I grew up with that. So I think the skills that he had and the way he did things and applied it to art once he got into that trade. I just grew up with that, so I'm sure that some of it probably seeped over to me in the way that I work. And but a lot of times, he would get in a situation where I had helped him out a little bit, but most of the time, people look at that image of my dad, but that's probably like 60 years old. So, growing up, he looked like Popeye the Sailor Man. So, as long as I knew him, he always was 30 in the waist, and he had to get an extra coat if he got a suit, because he was just, the man was built, so you start a conversation with him, you just had to bend down and do what he had for you to do, and that was the end of that story.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I really appreciate that so much of your work is so both figural and also playful, but it really has almost a longing for a time gone by, and so that's part of why you and I discussed that we wanted to call this particular exhibition "Seated in Memory." You're always so forward-looking, but so much of your sculpture you purposely make to look as though it is prematurely aged, and you've been pretty secretive about that process. I might add, you've got a lock on whatever this process you do. But if you can talk about sort of the patina that you put on your sculptures, because all of these are and, when you're making them, they look really new, and then you prematurely age them to look like that. Can you tell us about that process and a little bit what you can reveal about the process that you use to make them look the way you want them to?
What I would say is that, over a 30-year period, you can't sell with what you see. And over that process of 30 years, you're constantly looking for an image in your mind to improve the product. And so over the years, I just came up with my way of treating the paint, the materials that I use, the way I treat the material before I paint it. And I think I'll probably just leave it at that.
Okay, well that's really fair. I also want to touch on, so there are a lot of, and I've learned this through looking at your back catalog, there are a lot of biblical themes that go through your work as well. Can you speak to the source material that you're using to include those biblical themes in your work? Because I know that's an important part of your life, and you bring that into your art.
Yes, actually, my dad was raised by his great aunt.
Okay.
And she lived next door to us. So she was the person that went to church, like every day in the week, her and her husband both. And that was part of my dad. So we grew up as Baptists, and basically kind of had that church background. And you couldn't get too far out of line with that. Mm-hmm. And it's embedded in me. So when I'm trying to come up with something that I think most people can relate to, and I just relate back to that history of me growing up as a Baptist, and my great auntie and her husband.
Yeah. That's good. Now, in addition to figural work, you do also occasionally branch out to abstract work, and so I've got a couple pieces that are more on the abstract side. Can you talk a little bit about, because in talking to you, you are really proud of the fact that all of your work, in addition to being a sculptural object, all of your work is engineerily sound. You can sit on all of these pieces. And so talk a little bit about the engineering that goes into having the skill set to not only be able to make something that's beautiful, but make something that's functional also.
Well, I guess I had to own up to it. It's like coming through school, I guess art was just always inside of me. It's just something that just regardless of where you go, what you do, you get bit like, okay, you need to be creating this, you need to do this. So it's a little something that's in me that's been kind of shaking my insides really all my whole life. And so just the workmanship that go into that, then I started, like I said, from 19 to this day, just dealing with metal, and I had the opportunity to work with great fabricators, great machinists, and so if it's something about metal that I don't know, then I know somebody that do know.
Right.
So just dealing with metal and adding those two things together and trying to be creative is what I think what we're looking at right now. Yeah.
I love that story you tell about working for the patio furniture manufacturer and getting to the point where you realize that it's like, God, if we're going to be working for this guy for the rest of whatever, we might as well go into business for ourselves. And you talk about how it was such a growth process of learning and then getting to the next step and learning a little bit more. But are there other artists? Because in driving through Bessemer, I did not realize that there was so much mural work, and I saw some other sculptures while I was in Bessemer. Are there other local artists that you sort of cooperate with, or you reach out to each other, or what? I mean, it sounds like it's all happening in Bessemer.
Well, Bessemer, Ronald Lockett, a lot of people probably heard him. Lonnie Holiday, you know, he's a giant now, so, you know, I get a chance to talk with him, you know, every other month or so. But basically, I think maybe Lonnie, you know, because I think the times when we was like really giving up, it's just not gonna work, the income won't work, and he would just pop up, you know, like, okay then. And I mean, he was, I think the one that I would grant the most credit to, and just, he would come by and just sit there and talk just like he was one of us. And today, I have to say that he is one of us. And so I think the time when we needed that spirit around us, Lonnie would just pop up out of nowhere and he'd sit there with us and maybe eat dinner and talk. And so I would just say, you know, majority of that probably came from Lonnie.
That's wonderful. Well, I've got some slides of some of the work that's here in our gallery today. So this is Exhausted in Love. This is, I would call this a fan favorite. I've shown several people ahead of time this piece, and everybody has had their own comment on what they like about it, and no two people have seen it the same way. So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about what the inspiration was for Exhausted in Love, and the picture does really not do it justice if you will go and see it in the exhibition hall. It is primarily made of automobile parts, and I didn't realize until it was literally in my gallery that most of the fabric is made from jeans that you have, like blue jeans that you've taken apart. So tell us about the inspiration for Exhausted in Love.
Well, I guess everybody got their opinion. You know, it's the way they look at love, and you know, through life experiences, you realize that. I think I married like 21 years old, and you know, life can give you, love can give you a big boost, and then it can drop, and eventually, you know, you just get too far like into it, and you're trying to work on it to get it to moving, try to get it to, you know, produce what you wanted to produce. So it's a situation where most young people probably won't realize, but it's something you got to work on like day and night, every day and night, you know. So, you know, after a while, you know, you get to the place you just get exhausted.
I love the literal nature of the title, but also exactly what you're saying. You know, let's extend the analogy. Love is like an automobile. How many miles can you drive a car before you're going to have to put something else into it? It's not just something you can just sit out in the driveway and ignore. And I think the very first time I saw this, I said, "Oh, is this the love seat?" And they said, "No, don't call it that." So help me with the pronunciation. We have Gethsemane. Is that Gethsemane? And then help me out, people that went to church. How do you say it? Thank you. And then we have this is Early Morning Patches, right? So this is kind of what I'm talking about. The two major themes in your work are love and love in community, and the spiritual faith that you grew up and around. And so talk to us a little bit about this sculpture on the side here, because I really enjoy. There's two sculptures we have that have a figural element, where one is a person. It's a sculpture that's almost like a figure that's kind of bending their legs over, and this one we have a figure that's sort of down on one knee. I love how you're able to mimic the form of the human, but it takes on such an engineer's quality for design. And to reiterate, all of these chairs are perfectly balanced in a way that I just don't think anybody other than a real expert could be able to do this. So tell us a little bit about creating these and making them so that they were both functional and artistically integral.
Well, functional part, just most people don't realize that if I'm going to create a chair, just a chair for an example, and it's got 4 legs on it, to be able to get those 4 legs to balance out, don't always work the way you have planned. So, and especially when it comes down to like iron, because once you start welding on in any piece of iron, the iron starts kind of moving around with you regardless of what you do, unless you just got some jig where you put it in and you just kind of clamp it down, and even when you get through welding together, there's possibility that it would be out of balance. But that's one thing you really have to start at when you start looking at a functional piece. But my goal was, and you probably look at most of my pieces, I wanted something that would be functional, something that you could sit in instead of just being able to look at it. And the engineering, you have to kind of work that out in your mind, like the weight load and, balancing it out once you get there. Another part of it is just, if you look at it, it's not paint, it's metal. One of the hardest substances to work on. And each part, is specifically mostly cut to fit a certain area. And if it don't fit, you gotta start over or make it fit some kind of way. But most of it, you gotta kind of work out those details before you get started. And there, you start, the welding process, and like each part, that's whether you got a bend, you gotta have some kind of press or die, some way of forming that particular piece. This structure here is mostly, I think what we're looking at here is like 1/2 inch steel rods. And it can fight back when it wants to, and things don't always come out the way you want it to, but I guess through experience, just dealing with iron, it kind of seems a little simple to me because I know where I'm going. But each piece is designed specifically for a certain point. For example, the lace on the shoes, it just don't fall out of air, and then you gotta kind of calculate in your mind what you want to do and how you want to do it before you get there. And so that's covered that territory, I believe. If anybody have any questions, I'd be glad.
I mean, it's one of those things where I know a lot of folks, and those of us that are artists in the room, it's very easy when you go to a gallery and you go, so I probably could have done that. Jackson Pollock just, splatters some paint. Yeah, I could probably do that. If I had a welding machine, I bet I could do that. And there's so much to, in looking at these pictures, the thing that always jumps out at me is that you have managed to make a chair that only has 2 legs. Just think about it. You think about a chair with 4 legs, and this man has figured out a way to do it in 2. So, you go be an artist. So, we got 2 more that I want to talk about. So this is the one that my heart is on right now. I've really fallen in love with royalty. But you do a lot, and I wish I had more photos to show of. You have, and this kind of goes back to Exhausted in Love. You have a lot of pieces that are like this piece Partners right here, where you include more than one figure in the sculpture. So you might have 2 feet, but you've got more than 2 figures in the work itself, and I think that speaks to your theme that sort of runs through your work of community and love. So I'll let you speak on that.
Okay. well, we'll start with Patches because I owe that credit to my brother over here. He's the one that you started the conversation off with. I was working in the manufacturer, like the maintenance department, and I had to come up with all these different parts. And it's like, okay, Richard, he'd come by my shop where I was working at and said, well, Richard, hey man, why don't you do some of this stuff for us? So, well, okay. And I told him what, equipment I need. He went and purchased that. That's back in the backyard in the chicken coop, and I dished the project that we was talking about right there on the porch. But I basically kind of ran with my older brother. He was kind of like on the side, like you paid your baby brother any attention, and so he turned me off in a way. And I think to this day that none of this probably would have happened if it hadn't been for him. He turned me off in a nasty way, like he wasn't going to do it. I'm not going to tell all the words, no, he's not going to do anything, and snapped me up and walked off. So that point, I had to prove to him that I really was going to, do a project, and that's how I got started here. And the name of this piece is Partner, so I guess what I really had in mind was just me and him, because we worked together so good for over 30 years, and he's been there by my side from the day we got started and to this day. And I know it's down times, everybody think you gotta do it because you start a business, everything's gonna move perfect from here, but it was times when he'd look at me and bust out and go cry because we didn't have the income. And I'd dry him up, and then I look at him and he go through the same process, so we really, to be two brothers, we work tremendously well together, and regardless of time of day, time of night, if I need him, I can pick the phone up and call him. If I needed to work all day and all night, he gonna do it. So me and him we just kind of focus, the focus is together, and I think a large part of my success, I know it just comes to by having a great partner to work with. Yeah.
That really does take us full circle to, when you talk about your dad and you talk about, your work ethic that is the one thing that I hear most from working artists is, yeah, there was probably an easier way to do this, but if I didn't do this, I had to. It just had to be done, and that's amazing. Well, I'm gonna open it up to our audience now, because I know they have some more intelligent questions to ask than I do. But I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to the group here. If anybody wants to raise a hand and engage with our artists here, and if you don't raise a hand, I'll come and pick you myself.
How are you, Mr.
Oh, fine, man.
So, being from Bessemer, I would maybe assume that you were familiar with Mr. Gibb and Gibb's Place.
Yes, sir.
Your art sort of reminds me of how what he did with the juke joint, with finding things that are ordinary and making it to something really, really remarkable. How important is that you're showing maybe the simplicity of the culture in which Bessemer has, and you're coming to be and making it into something that people marvel at?
Be honest with you, I still think if you look at Bessemer as a whole, there's a lot of people in Bessemer that came up the same way. And I guess where I really get my inspiration from was it's my dad, and it was 5 kids, and my dad was like a person that just never threw his hands in, regardless. With all the plant closing and all those things, I do not remember no food not being on the table. I don't remember not having anything for Christmas. And when I look back, you know, and he passed in 2016, but when I look back and see what kind of man he was, that grew up in Bessemer and went through all the changes that all the people in Bessemer with the plain clothes and all that. I guess I never thanked him enough, you know, because I could speak to him today, I would just tell him that, just thank you, thank you.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Now, I'm standing behind. This is one of the first people I reached out to, and Landon, I'm gonna put it on you because when I said, you know, we're gonna be having Richard Dial, and I could almost feel like the air leave the room over the phone because you're like, I'm kind of a fan. So I'm gonna let the fans speak to the artist now. Go ahead and tell them what you got to say.
Well, of course, I've always admired your father's work in many museums. And one of my favorite pieces at the High Museum in Atlanta is the one that you did of the two figural chairs. And it's just, I'm starstruck. But thank you for bringing like so much joy, you know, to this museum art addict, for real. You and your father. The pieces are just great to spend time in front of. And I always see something different every time I see your work. It's an honor to meet you.
Oh, man, thank you.
All right. Well, that wasn't as good a question. I'm going to pass it over to the sculptor here, and he's going to ask you some very technical questions about your work now.
Well, it's not a question, but I'm just going to put it as a compliment. And I'm going to borrow something from you because I've been thinking about this body of work that I want to do is about memory and how we cherish culture. And spoiler alert, I'm going to borrow your theme, seated in memory, because I'm going to use it as the place of the sitters. And I want to talk about how our ancestors, you know, were moved all the way from Africa to overseas and how we kind of, when I think about these things, sometimes I feel scared for them because it was a journey that they never got to talk about. It's a journey that they never got to celebrate. And thinking about what you just said about exhausted in love, I'm thinking about how they would have interpreted this, and I'm just gonna take it on myself to make it a point. So thank you.
I love how artists use words like borrow, appropriate, a pastiche. I'm going to do an homage. Those are all synonyms for steal. Artists like to steal.
How you doing? My name is Jalen Taylor.
All right,
I'm a student here at Talladega College. I just had a question. So basically, personally, I just wanted to know, like, with your artwork, like, what type of message or what type of feeling do you want people to feel after, like, they see your work?
But basically, you know, I think maybe me or any other artist, you know, when you look at my art in particular, is try to get the feeling that I really would like for you to get to feel what I'm trying to put into that particular piece to express to the people like you all that took the time out today to come by and look at the exhibit. And like I had mentioned, Exhausted for Love, for an example, that was a part of my life. Partners was a part of my life, you know, so I think everybody had a way of trying to express like who they are. And being an artist gives you the perfect opportunity for people to kind of feel you and what kind of soul that you have, because it goes deeper than just the still, but the creative part of it is just part of who you are and what you're trying to express and the way you're trying to express yourself to other people.
Definitely. Thank you.
That's great. I love that you have the wisdom to impart upon our students that have come out today. Do you all have questions for the artist? Yes.
Hello, everybody. I guess I can stand up, show some respect. This is my uncle actually, and I have a question for you. So, I got the chance to know Thornton Dow, as that's my granddad, and I have the opportunity to know Richard Dow. And my granddad would always say that he just always had ideas that he had to get out. And that's what part of his creative process was, just being able to put those ideas out. So I just wanted to ask, do you go through a similar situation where you're like, oh, I got this idea that I have to get out now, or you'll forget it, or maybe, I just want to know, what is the creative, I never asked, I've seen it, and I never asked the question, and sometimes it just blows my mind to see it, because maybe I'll stop by and see, oh, we're starting to work on this, and I come by the next day and it's almost done. I'm like, how? So I just wanted to know, what is that process that you go through when you're coming up with ideas, and do you already just have a bunch of ideas that you want to make? So that's the question.
I personally, I think all of us created the same way. It's just that anything that you focus on for, day after day, these certain images is just gonna pop out, whether you're trying to make a calculation on in math or whatever you're into. I think all of them are born with that, the search for something that's deep inside of us. So, just to answer your question, I have to go back to your granddaddy, because I think I matured over the years, and I approached him, I think, once with that same question. I saw him in a deep focus, I'm kind of concerned, because he's up in age, Daddy, what's going on, And that's for the first time, he told me, Richard, I'm trying to focus on this piece that I'm fixing to get into. Well, I never knew it got that deep, So I think we can always go a little bit deeper with what thoughts that we have or what dreams that we have, because we just kind of scratching the surface. And I think if you can lock in on something, it's just like looking at the internet, you look at something, you Google something, and you forget about it, and all of a sudden it pops back up again. Well, that's kind of like where your brain works, So you kind of put things to sleep for a little while, and if it's really, really intent for you to do, then it pops back up, and then it'll be a little bit more added to it as you focus, and even when you probably sleep, So a lot of things just keep you woke up all night, and you want to focus on it. So when things get that deep, I think that's the time when you really need to do something about it.
Thank you for coming today. Have you ever finished a piece and you look at it and you just absolutely don't like it, and you put it off to the side, and you come back years later, you look at it like it wasn't as bad?
All the time.
I don't know an artist that has not looked at something and thought to themselves, I can't believe I worked on that for that long for it to look like that. But then also, one of the things, and you probably know this too, at some point you just have to be done with it, because you can just keep working on it and you will work it to death and it'll never be done. And sometimes you just have to be done.
Yeah, just to add to that, it was this one particular piece that it was made, several years ago. Nice piece. It just didn't speak as loud as it should. and I took one piece off of it and everything else popped out, you know, so I was satisfied.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to pass it to our Dean of the Fine Arts and Humanities, or Humanities and Fine Arts, depending upon which one we're showing off at the time. This is our newly invested Dean Peterson, Dr. Dean Peterson. I'm going to pass it on to you.
Thank you, Mr. Trice. As a fellow Birminghamian, I know Bessemer and Birmingham are right there. I would just like to know, what advice would you have for our up-and-coming artists? We had chapel yesterday for those students who were in chapel, and one of our themes was keep on keeping on. So what advice would you have for our up-and-coming artists to continue to do what they're passionate about?
I'm just gonna say, you know, you're looking at like a 70-year-old, so anything that you give up on, you know, it could be a loss. So I think most people is born with a certain talent, regardless of what it is. And if you give up on that talent and you can start doing something else, I think, maybe I'm saying this right, that your birthright to that, you're the one giving that up. And nothing is easy. Out of 70 years that I've been on face of the earth, that everything's a struggle, you know, so you really gotta, you'll know, I think, from my experience, that you'll know when you're on the right track, because what you do, regardless of what came out the way that you wanted to, at the end of the day, you're satisfied with it. And you can start back the next day. And if you keep coming up with things that don't relax that energy that's in you, then you're probably on the wrong track. Yeah.
Thank you.
We got one more question over here.
My question is, so when Perry gave us the information about you to, you know, feature you, Rick and I work in communications here. I told Rick, we got to come to this. Like I'm a huge fan of your work. I just was introduced to your work just like this past month. I want to know if you're still working on any new works, and what has inspired you to make your work like functional? And do you actually like sell work that are like seats, that are actual chairs?
All I think, except for probably 2 or 3 sculptures were chairs. All of them, except for one that I know of, is functional. You can sit in it. And I guess if I had, you know, I could draw a chair and people look at it and say it's a chair. So you still have to work from the insides as to what vision do I have to be able to do certain things. And that's the vision that I have to produce functional chairs that people can actually sit in. And most of them are really comfortable, you know, and so I start trying to even look at that, try to make it as comfortable as possible. But it's a difficult task when you're trying to put an image into a chair. You got limitations, you know, the thing got 4 legs on it, so it's a little bit challenging, and sometimes, you know, you have to focus on that, but eventually, you know, I just get through it. Yeah.
Good, very good. I'm gonna help Mr. Dial answer this question, because I've been to the studio. You take commission work, and in addition to chairs, you have a very handsome desk that I saw when I was in your studio. So in addition to making sculptural work, you do make quote unquote functional work. So the answer is yes. The other answer, and again, humble, everything you see in this gallery is for sale. So if you are interested in purchasing any of Mr. Dial's work, and you brought your checkbook with you today, or I can put you in touch with the artist. I know how to make contact. We can set you up with some very fine home furniture, or possibly a commissioned piece. This is a working artist. Just because you show in a few galleries doesn't mean you don't have a light bill to pay. So remember that. You have to be out there supporting artists. So at this time, I saw a few more folks come in the back. Folks that have been to the lecture before, you know, we always and Dr. Fobbs won't let me get away without doing it. We always do a door prize because that brings the students in. So if you haven't gotten your ticket for the door prize, go ahead and raise your hand now. Ms. Warwick will be walking around to give you that last minute winning ticket. But before we do that, I want to impart a gift because this man has already given me so much already. I went ahead and got you something. I reached into my pocket and I purchased this book for you. This is the catalog of the Amistad murals. This talks about the artist Hale Woodruff, and it talks about the making of the murals, and from one failed artist to a successful one. I think you can really appreciate the beauty that really goes into making something creative that you really love, and I want you to have that as a thank you from me, a small token of my appreciation. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and draw our door prizes. Everybody's a winner because you came and visited us today, but at least one of you is going to, like the PBS